Welcome, everyone, and thanks for attending and joining us today. I'm Jim Love. I'm the CIO of IT World Canada, ITWC, and I'm your host for today's webinar. And the webinar is entitled, Is Your Managed Services Provider Helping You Enable Innovation? And we got some great content for you today, but before we get started, I'm going to take care of a few housekeeping items. Those of you who've been to one of our webinars before, you probably know the drill, but for the new people here, we make these as interactive as possible and just encourage that. So if you've got questions or even comments, please, I encourage you to submit your questions through the Ask a Question box. If we can get to them partway through the presentation, we will, but we'll save them for the end. And even if we don't answer them all, we'll make sure you get an answer to your question at the end of the webinar. That said, we're also going to be asking a few poll questions here. And in order for the poll question to work, you have to turn off your pop-up blocker if you've got one on there. But please take some time to participate in these polls. They're fun, they're informative, and all kinds of cool stuff. But the majority thing is they give us some interaction with you, and they tell the presenters a little bit about you, and it helps us be as relevant as possible for you. We will make every attempt to start and finish on time, and you'll notice that we managed to start on time. So that's good. All we got to do is finish on time. But it's a full hour, and there's a lot of stuff in here, and it happens in segments. So please stick around to the end to get the full benefit of this program in there. And for those who do, watch for a thank you email from us and there. And that email will contain a download link for the presentation. So you don't have to worry about making notes or screenshots or anything like that. Just relax, enjoy, watch what's happening there, and we'll send you a copy of the presentation very shortly after there. You should get this email, I think, early next week. And as a thank you for attending today, and the and is important, and completing the evaluation form, and that's the important part. I'm going to send you a $20 Ultimate Dining gift within a month of the webinar. And the reason I'm going to give you that gift is because you've given us a gift, your comments. Your comments are important to us, your participation is important to us, and helping us shape and make better webinars for you is important to us. So take a second to complete that evaluation. Pleased to send you the card, says a thank you, and pleased to get your feedback. Good, bad, what we should do better, that's great. It's up to you. But it helps us have better programs for you, and that's the point. And now we're on to the program. So thanks a lot for sitting through that. I was saying to one of the presenters before we got through, it's an incredible time in technology. I've been doing this for a long time, 35 years, and I thought at one point I might get bored. I thought, especially with the advent of cloud and all of the stuff that's happened, in many cases, we're not talking about technical limitations anymore. We're talking about the limitations of our imagination. We're capable of doing so many things. And I thought, that it might get a little dull, and that couldn't be more wrong. First of all, the possibilities of the things we can do technically today, whether it's big cloud, big analytics, emerging AI, all of those things create such an enormous wealth of possibilities. But another cool thing happened, and that was when I started out, we had business and IT. And over these years, as we moved technically to what we can do, we're getting a new type of technology leadership. And that technology leadership is collaborative, it's exploratory, it's fun, and it's working in different ways. And, all kinds of developments have happened. There's the whole big mega cloud, public cloud providers that come out. And that's interesting. But one of the more interesting things that's happened are the ecosystem, the maturity of the cloud architecture that's happened, and the new types of partnerships that have emerged. And one of those we're going to talk about is MSPs, or managed service providers. We're talking about the way that they participate within this cloud infrastructure and with this new technology infrastructure, the way they can help bring together business and technology and make things possible in a way we never thought possible. Because, as everybody says, I used to do the hands up, who works for IT, who works for the business? Everybody works for the business. That's where we are. And so we've got this, this great thing that we can do now. So as cloud service architectures mature, they get more complex, and we need guidelines. We need help going through and work our way through that. And MSPs are one great way that help enable a business vision in technology. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We've got three great guests with me today. Joining me for this in-depth conversation are special guests, Vic Duda, who from Carbon60, he's a VP of Marketing. Melody Collette, and we're going to give her a special introduction in a second. She's the SVP IT and Operations at COMDA, and we'll talk about that. And Chris Christianopoulos, who turns out to be in IT almost as long as I have. I think we're from HP Enterprise Strategic Partners and Service Providers. So welcome, Chris. Say hi to people.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for investing the time. Look forward to a very informative session. My background, I've held a variety of different roles. I've led our cloud business for a number of years at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and now most recently, as the world's evolving, service providers are core to our strategy, and we're fortunate to have Vic with us here today as well.
Yeah, and welcome, Vic.
Great, thanks, Jim. My name is Vic Duda, as Jim mentioned. I'm the VP of Marketing and Alliances for Carbon60 Networks, and we're looking forward to this conversation to really talk about a client's journey, a customer's journey with Melody on what makes for an important relationship with managed service providers. And I think it's a great introduction, Jim, and we look forward to the discussion.
Great. And so, Melody, tell us a little bit about yourself and about COMDA. I've got COMDA on the brain here. COMDA. Tell us a little bit about the company and who you are.
So my name is Melody Collette. I am from COMDA Advertising Connections. We are a promotional products company. We serve clients all across the United States and Canada. The company has been in business for 45 years and actually celebrating our 45th anniversary this year in June.
Wow.
I've been very fortunate to work in the company for over 28 years. I've had experiences across the business starting in the warehouse, in the printing areas. I've had experience in sales and customer service, administration, payroll. So the opportunities for me were endless. I was able to go anywhere in the business and learn about the business and have grown up with it literally. 3 years old, being on the floor.
and when did you sort of confront the IT part of it? When did that come to you?
Well, probably about 7 years ago now. The company moved into to a new ERP platform, and with my experience being in all the areas at COMDA, I was part of the implementation team to put this new system in place. I began working with developers then, the software company that was working with us at the time. So the relationship started with working with these developers.
And you got hooked.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very interested.
Great.
Yeah. Business process was my thing, so.
Well, great, and we're looking forward to having you here and sharing your expertise with our audience and sharing your perspective on this thing. So, welcome, guys. We're going to start. We promised we'd make this interactive. We're going to start with a poll. So we've introduced ourselves. So tell us a little bit about you. We want to do our poll question there. And we'll just ask this question: where are you today, primarily in terms of what you're doing with IT? Are you managing your IT internally in there? And I appreciate there's all kinds of differences there, but just primarily, where are you? Are you managing it internally? Do you use a managed service provider now in there? Are you mostly in the cloud? Are you one of those born in the cloud, public cloud type companies, and are you existing mostly there, or is it other? And if it's other, love to hear from you too on that. So in the question box, send us a note and tell us why you think you're an other, or why you think where you are today could be described as other in there. So we'll do that, and everybody else, if you click on your survey tab, guys, you can watch this stuff evolve as they go through. And we have, this is amazing. This is good. Okay, so you got a great audience to talk to today, Vic, and everybody. Managing IT internally in there, 80% of the people. That's still a lot. And you can see, some are using a managed service provider in there, and some describe themselves more as public cloud. No others out there. So I'm waiting to hear the one other out there in there. Okay, so that's you guys. Chris, you've been around a while. Vic, you've been around a while. What this sort of the audience you expected in there?
Yeah, I think from what we've seen, and I've been in the managed hosting and MSP industry for quite a bit, these numbers are pretty accurate, and we aim to help those that are managing IT internally, that are looking for changes, based on the changes that are going on in the marketplace, different technologies available, different models available, and also those that are within public cloud that also need help. So I was at an event yesterday, and the numbers look almost identical to what we're seeing here.
Great. So we'll push those so you guys can take a look at them, and we'll give you a brief look at it, and then Chris will start. But yeah, it is. There's still. I'm still surprised that still a lot of people are managing their own would describe themselves as managing their own stuff internally in there, and that's nothing wrong with that. But it's just it's there's still a lot of growth. Chris, you've seen the cloud thing grow.
Absolutely, I agree. And if we look at typically what it's people, process, and culture that changes when you look at, leveraging or consuming as a service. And, we've seen that gradual transition, and, I'll speak to it a bit in my slides here as we move forward. But, it's from a Canadian market perspective, we've been traditionally slower than the U.S. and definitely slower than Europe, Middle East, and Africa. But we're now starting to see RFPs, RFIs on the streets with customers that are asking about, we want to potentially consume as a service. We don't want necessarily to make a capital acquisition. And, we've really started to see that movement, I'll say, over the last year.
Yeah. And I bet you, because the Canadian architecture is primarily hybrid. I mean, although we see ourselves as managing our own shop, you'd be surprised how much cloud is in there, how disparate the things are, and how different each company is in terms of its own architecture. I've described it as a maturing architecture, but there certainly is this nascent piece that's going to move cloud-wise or cloud toward the cloud or towards managed services that is certainly part of the thing. We see that the biggest providers have or the biggest companies have that way, and very effectively reduced their costs, increased their throughput, what they can do, and freed up money to invest in business initiatives, which has got to be music to your
Absolutely.
ears. Yeah.
Yep.
Good stuff. Chris,
Good.
why don't you take it forward and walk
Great.
us through.
Thank you, Jim. So like I said, thank you very much for taking the time. I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes discussing the market. As you heard from Jim, as you've heard from Vic and from Melody, as we look at how IT is evolving over time, the way people are consuming technology, software, services is evolving. So, from that perspective, if we look at, what are the different distribution models that we see in the marketplace today, as the poll has shown us here, there's a number of you that have invested and continue to invest in traditional IT and running on-prem, and we don't see that going away. But really, what some of the key enablers are with regards to leveraging other distribution models, whether it be private cloud, a managed service provider, and them providing that capability to you, is really driving more efficiency. So if we look at how do we drive greater operational efficiency, how do we help to drive agility, how do we help to streamline so that our entire time isn't focused just on managing IT, but it's about enabling the business as well. Because at the end of the day, competitors change, go-to-market strategies change, and when we look at how do we enable the business to be more competitive in the marketplace, driving operational efficiencies, that's where hybrid starts to make a lot of sense. And when we talk about defining a right mix strategy really means there are some applications that are conducive to being on your premise. There are some applications or some test dev requirements that might make sense running in a public cloud, and there's some mission critical applications based on SLAs, compliance, security, data residency that you'll say, a managed service provider like Carbon60 would be a best fit to help drive some of those application requirements depending on what makes sense for our business, right? So, we've started to see that shift, and there's, as you see on the slide here, there's a huge implication from a market perspective, because it's not just about CapEx spending now. It's about thinking about OpEx and thinking about, if we consume as a service, just making sure we have the right strategy end to end that gives us the ability to be able to take advantage of what distribution model makes the most sense for our applications based on our business. And that's really, the key piece here is there are providers out in the marketplace who's going to be the right provider to help meet your business requirements and help to drive success for what you're looking to enable from a business strategy perspective. So you say, okay, Chris, you've been doing a lot of talking here, so how about a data point? So here's a Gartner slide I have up here for you just to kind of show you the trend that we're seeing across segments. So whether it's small, medium business, whether it's the enterprise business, we're starting to see more and more organizations leveraging more of a hybrid strategy to not only run everything on premise, but potentially leverage a managed service provider, potentially leverage, a public cloud entity for some given pieces of test and development, potentially. But at the end of the day, an interesting data point here is that if you look at the growth on this slide, the expectation is by 2025, approximately 60% of all the compute is going to reside within service providers and the large hyperscalers of the public clouds of who you probably already know. But that's showing us that we're starting to see that wave of customers not only leveraging on premise but also leveraging a managed service provider to help to provide the requirements of the business to drive greater efficiencies and agility with regards to the day-to-day operations of your environments. So if we look at, sorry here, I'm having a challenge. Won't allow me.
Move the slide.
If somebody can forward the slide for me, it doesn't seem.
There you go. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
We have the technology. We can rebuild it.
Thank you, Jim. So, I think the big thing here is, as I mentioned earlier, technology is not the challenge. It's people, it's process, it's culture, and I travel across the country speaking to customers, large and small, and partners as well, and they're looking for assistance, and this is where I think a Carbon60 can be a big help. Where we know what our desired state is. We know where we are right now, but how do we help to develop a blueprint in terms of how we take those stepping stones to take advantage of other capabilities and other distribution models that are out in the marketplace? And that's where, it's a balancing act. One is, we know there's existing infrastructure in your environments to manage your day-to-day, but there's also the other side of the business with regards to, managing profitability, ensuring we're competitive in the marketplace, ensuring that we have a differentiated offering in the marketplace as well. We look at technology, and I'm sure a number of you on this phone are looking at various technologies to say, we don't want to invest in one given technology that's going to lock us in to any specific vendor or any specific solution. There's security, there's compliance, there's SLAs, and based on what your business requirements are is going to dictate. So if you tell me mission critical application, it needs to be potentially within my four walls from a security perspective. I can't have this residing anywhere else. That's one conversation. The other piece is that based on cost, based on efficiency, based on having a partner that can provide you with a service level agreement to say it's going to reside in country, you're going to have full control of that environment, then that might be a discussion where, it makes sense to have it residing, in a Carbon60 data center, as an example, from a managed services perspective. So, there's a number of different factors here, and, there's a lot of expertise and knowledge that you can leverage to kind of help develop that blueprint for you. So, as I close off here, you're all familiar with a number of the hyperscalers that are out there, and you'll say, why a managed service provider versus a large hyperscaler or a large public cloud provider? And if you're looking for cheap compute, you're looking for cheap storage, you're looking to put a credit card online to get access to some resources, some compute resources or some storage for a given period of time, that's a different discussion where potentially a public cloud provider would make sense there. If you're looking at how do we help to enable our business, how do we help to scale, how do we help to minimize the ongoing investments we need to make in technology so we can focus on the business, that's where having a white glove service from a Carbon60 as an example, or Carbon60 who, as you'll hear beyond me here, this is their bread and butter. This is what they help to enable organizations do to help drive success, and you'll hear more about that from Vic and Melody as we move on. So, I mean, that's it for my piece. I appreciate everyone's time, and at this point, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Well, fabulous. Thanks, Chris. And made the case very effectively. And it's so funny because as we go back to a chance to talk about this, but way back early in my career, I started working with HP, and we were talking about apps. We were always talking about partnerships, and I've worked with your company all the way up to HPE in different partnerships things. We've all known this for a long time, that you can't do this stuff on your own. You do really need, and that's when I talk to CIOs all the time, we're talking about partnership. That's our new world, and we have to live within that. And the public cloud providers become one of those things we can use, another tool in our toolkit, but the question is where to use it in there. And so we're going to turn it back, and we're going to go back to you guys and ask the audience in there. We talked about this considering a public cloud provider, and we talked about the MSP as being a great source of advice or help in that. Where's your main source of advice today? When you're looking at a public cloud provider, where are you going for advice? Internal resources, do you go to your MSP? Do you go to your providers in there? An independent consultant, other, could be, you read about it in IT World. Oh, sorry, quick commercial there, no. But whatever the other is, just let us know in there. And you don't get an extra coffee card if you mention IT World. So where do you go? So we'll take a look at your answers in here. We'll take it. So a lot of people looking at an internal resource, and okay, in there. So anybody else? So, jump in, don't be shy. Okay, we're starting to see more of the answers come in now. So some actually are looking at their MSP in there. That's the place that they think to go. Either that or you were so passionate about it, Chris, they've come to that conclusion in there. We're sort of neck and neck in there. We'll give you a couple more seconds to answer in there as we go through that. And I'm just going to turn it over to Vic. This is something that is emerged, and I think a new role. It's a growth for the MSP. It's a new world for you in there. How do you find that people are coming to you more and more for advice in these areas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming from the managed hosting, managed services world, with both existing customers and new clients that we're working with, the question always does come up with respect to public cloud. And Amazon and the hyperscale, Google and Microsoft are doing a great job from a category perspective now that they're finally here in country. And I think it's great for a Canadian enterprise and mid-market to have that as an option as well. I think it's naive of any of us to think that that's not a great idea. So I think when you look at existing customers, the conversation always is around. We've heard a lot about this public cloud. What's your take on it as a vendor? Are you guys looking into it? And similarly with new customers, again, you guys put out a lot of content, a lot of articles within the industry about different models. So clients ask us the same kind of questions. What do you guys do? Do you have the credibility? How can you help us? So we get into those conversations live.
So we'll push this poll live so the audience can see it. If we haven't already done that, that'd be great. So you can see what's happening. Is mostly people looking at a lot of internal resources. Some people looking at the MSP. Melody, you met Vic somewhere along the line. This is something you turned towards his company for advice. And how'd you guys meet?
Well, I met Vic actually a couple of years ago now, but originally met Peter Kelly, the founder of Carbon60, back in 2005. But that was actually when COMDA was just moving on to its new ERP system. But we really developed our relationship with Carbon60 in 2012, and that's when I took over being the IT director at the time. We were looking to, filling somebody else's shoes who had just left, and basically inherited a lot of on-premise equipment, servers that were going to be out of life, equipment. A lot of breakdowns going on at all at once. I kind of inherited, but in 2012 was really when we started the relationship, and I looked to outsourcing for that reason.
So Vic's going to tell us a little bit about that and take us through and talk to you about the role of the MSP and how that's helped advance the business, how that's doing. Vic, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So before we get into what we do, just a quick background on who we are. So Carbon60, we're a managed hosting service provider. We've been around since 1999. Really started out the company as a consulting company, really to help customers around web application performance and security, and through guiding customers from the consulting aspect of it, through project work and more advisory services, it led into, well, you're you're guiding us on it. Can you just manage everything for us as well? So that's kind of how we ended up into the hosting world, and fast forward a decade and a half, prior to my time, essentially grew as a managed hosting provider. So we're based in Canada, headquartered here in the Greater Toronto area. We serve pretty much mostly the Canadian market. We do have some customers in Europe and elsewhere as well, but we're most focused on the Canadian sector, mid-market to enterprise, lower end of enterprise. That being said, we do also have customers within the enterprise segment that essentially want to out-task a certain portion of their services. So our approach is, we're not a large IT outsourcing company. We're a managed service provider that sometimes is taken into consideration as outsourcing, but it's really selective outsourcing. We really take the approach of working with a team, with an organization as an extension of their team to carry out their goals.
I hope I'm not stealing the part of your later presentation. It would be cruel of me, but I love the way you describe your service, white glove service. I mean, it really does put you into a paradigm of how you can see your firm. It's actually a wonderful image. I wish I'd stolen it.
Great. So getting into what we do, so really three areas here. The first, the one on the top of the triad here, is the managed hybrid IT and cloud hosting solutions. So this could form any combination really of hosted private cloud and public cloud, a mixture of the two, really depending on the workloads and the applications, and then also in some cases on-prem IT services as well. So that gets us into more of an IT outsource. On the bottom left, enterprise application management. So we've built a niche over the years from our founder around web applications. So really on content management applications, really focused around WordPress and open source based applications, where we've developed a platform and really an expertise around what makes those platforms click for the enterprise. So we're not talking about the solopreneur type of environment, but more on the mid-market and enterprise, where mission critical applications and a website, for example, are key to their success. And then lastly, kind of tying the two together, is professional services and consulting. So that takes the form of guiding customers through cloud journeys, IT or infrastructure journeys, project work for existing customers on DevOps, and then as we go to public cloud, we're doing a lot more advisory service on how to get there and do assessments on their current state.
Cool.
So with the context of what we do, we want to take a pivot and really highlight what differentiates MSPs in terms of cloud management. And when I talk about cloud management, it's a mixture of everything. So it's hosted private cloud and also managed public cloud as well. So that's what we see within the industry. And as I mentioned earlier, the trend is moving towards a hybrid world, and we've adapted already and made investments to adapt there. So let's run off a few of them here. So skill set gaps. So within any organization, it really depends on the strategy of the organization. What do you really want to be? What do you want to focus on to help you drive towards your future? So if there's skill set gaps within the IT organization, the security organization, networking, et cetera, and especially with the dawn of this new era with public cloud, it's a paradigm shift in terms of the skill sets of the folks that are within certain roles. It's a different way of managing IT. And to have both at the same time is often difficult, and at the end of the day, it's a business decision as to, do you want to continue to do that or fill those gaps and look towards different models. 24/7 support. Chris mentioned this in his piece. As an MSP, having been around the industry for quite a while, this is what our customers demand of us, because they don't want to build the 24/7 capability in-house. It's costly in terms of the staffing levels you have to maintain to deliver that kind of support, and this is part of our business, and we have leverage built into the scale of what we do. Shrinking capital budgets. This is a key driver, as Chris also mentioned. With new models that are available, new distribution models, it makes sense to take a look at what else is out there in light of shrinking capital budgets is something that happens all the time. This is a value point for many of us. And then as an inflection point, I think when you look at hardware investments and also your internal resources and really what your focus is, there will always come an inflection point during the life cycle of your investment as to what am I doing? Is what I'm doing right? Should I be looking at different models? And that really brings upon the MSPs that are in the universe here to provide a different avenue to continue and to help you actually grow. And all this kind of leads into focusing on the innovation. So we enable innovation by taking care of a lot of these elements within IT so that customers can focus on what's driving their business as opposed to managing the underlying infrastructure behind it. So we kind of look at that as the plumbing. We're great expert plumbers within it, and we've got the certifications to be able to deliver this so that you can focus on growing your business.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. I mean, that you can get coverage and things, and expertise, or even a cheaper way to do things. Having a person all your own who stays up all night to do your 24/7 is probably not a good economical investment in there. But I love the idea of the focus, and that is, I think you have to decide as an organization where you're going to focus. Melody, you must, you come in, you find a pile of old servers there. You can either start arguing for a capital budget, building it internally, or you can go to somebody who knows how to get that done, and you can focus on the things that you want to or need to focus on.
Absolutely. That's exactly what drove me to the decision to outsource. Definitely did not want to have that on-premise. Did not want to have our staff trying to focus on managing an infrastructure that's not what their strengths are. They understand what the business is, and my team supports the business applications to make the users more productive, help our customers, and we rely on our vendors to do that.
Yeah.
That heavy lifting.
And I don't think people, the public cloud, you're going to talk about this in a second, Vic, I don't think people realize that this is not just put a credit card out there. This is a complex architecture which can be used very effectively to achieve the things that Melody's trying to achieve. But you have to know what you're doing. I mean, it is more complex. It's not, don't try this at home, we're professionals. It's not a failure of the internal people. This is a big world out there.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, I think what the public cloud hyperscalers are doing is fantastic. It's hard to keep up. Yesterday, Amazon released, I think, 5 or 6 different services, and they have 100 plus services that are available, and it's difficult for anybody, us included, frankly, to be a master of all of them. So what matters is the depth. Taking some specialization, developing a lot of depth in that within the business to be able to support different workloads or different strategies that customers are looking at. This slide is interesting in the sense that the left-hand side kind of talks about the global public cloud market, the massive scale hypercloud market. This was just put out by Structure Research last year. And the right-hand side is managed third-party cloud, which is what part of our business and a growing part of our business. But basically, the kind of from a vendor perspective talks about the opportunity. So as the public cloud grows, the consumption within the public cloud, so too will the requirement for MSPs to support customers that are struggling with it. Like I said earlier, the skill set required to manage IT is changing, and depending on the organization, the maturity of the organization, the individuals, going down to the individuals that are within our organization, some aren't going to be able to make that shift. And this is kind of where we look towards the MSP market that are developing the competencies, similar to how we've, within our community, have worked with the vendor community, with the manufacturers like HP and others, to get certified, get depth within those technologies. This is yet another technology stack for us and the community to get involved with and bring value to our customers.
Yeah, and like I said, I think I have access to way more information than many other people, shops our size, do because of who we are and what we talk to the technology community, and I'm blown away by the complexity of it. You need to stay on top of so many different things to just to function, never mind to be productive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the key there too is control points, right? Because the challenge is with, if you have somebody going and consuming something from a public cloud provider within an organization, security, governance, compliance, you don't want to start creating islands of services that are being consumed without having one central body, whether it's your managed services provider or the technical group within an organization, and to ensure that all those are being managed and compliant with what the organization's objectives are.
Yeah, and the takeaway for everybody is somebody has to do that. It doesn't go away in the public cloud. Somebody has to do that. You have to do it. You have to entrust somebody with it, but those are important pieces that don't go away because we've got public cloud. Good point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So other considerations, scope and scale, depth versus breadth. So there's, as an industry or a sector, we sometimes make things pretty confusing from the managed hosting world, public cloud world, the broader ecosystem. This is my view and my observations, having been in the sector for a while, and also what the industry view as well from an analyst perspective that we track. When we look at silo offerings, the advice is to be careful. There's a benefit towards focusing. We've seen consolidation, maybe half a decade ago, early in the 2010s.
And what's a silo offering?
Well, so when you think about co-location and managed hosting, bare metal,
one part of the stack,
or network, and then public cloud, they're very different. And when you look at organizations, when we look at the U.S. market, for example, 5-6 years ago, there's a lot of consolidation where there was a consolidation towards one provider to do everything. Yeah. And if you fast forward a couple of years after that, that kind of split up. There's benefit towards specialization, doing a few things very well as opposed to doing a couple of things in a decent level. So we see when you look at a public cloud operator, they do that great. When you look at the hyperscalers, that's their bread and butter. They focus on that. They don't handle a lot of the others. When you look at a co-location provider, the best ones are the ones that only do co-location. They have their operations down to a science, full data-driven decisions, and they continue to scale, and that's what's taken over. It's that middle area is where everyone can play. And for MSPs, it's important to understand, for them to understand what all of the different categories are, because as a customer, you could fit into any one of those, and many of our customers are in a hybrid world where we have to manage across all of those, across multiple vendors for a complete solution. But it's neither one. We don't focus on any single one of those. It's the breadth of it. At the end of the day, it's the glue that's the value. So stitching together the multiple offerings that are within a customer's requirement, that's where the value is. To be able to work across multiple vendors, get the depth across multiple vendor solutions, to bring together a comprehensive solution where you kind of take where the MSP kind of takes the brunt of the questions depending on the customer, to be able to manage across and manage deep within those offerings to deliver a complete solution.
Great. And just what the interesting thing at the bottom of that slide is the problem solvers. I found that twigged me. Melody, that was something that was important to you?
Absolutely. Whenever I've been looking at working with any type of vendor, I want to make sure that they're going to come to the table with me. They've got a proven track record of solving problems for us. Kind of got a little story to share with, it happens to be about Carbon60, but a way that they've rolled up their sleeves for us happened to be about 2 years ago. We had one of our databases went offline for some unknown reason. At 8 o'clock at night, I started getting alerts on my phone that one of the databases was down. And of course, them being the hosting provider, they're aware of the alerts. And we were trying desperately to get a hold of the developers that were working with us at the time to try and help figure out what was going on, and we couldn't get anybody on the phone. 8 o'clock at night, I've got a major ERP system down. Coming into work the next morning and not having it up was not an option, obviously. Was very fortunate that night. Our systems admin, who is a Carbon60 systems admin, works on site with us, and he gets the alerts all the time as well, so he was on the phone with us right away trying to help. Couldn't figure it out. escalated it to a senior engineer at Carbon60, and they ended up actually restoring from backup for us. Got it up and running, working with our people on staff, and that is a perfect example of how you need help, and you can rely on that provider to roll up their sleeves and do whatever it takes to get your business back up and running.
I keep telling every service provider that there's two things you can have when you have a disaster. You can have a pointing finger or a helping hand.
Exactly.
Be the helping hand. And
Yeah.
you're obviously proud of your people, and their customer experience is. I don't think people realize this, how important customer experience is in what's supposedly a technical service provision in there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we take client experience and culture very seriously. Our technical, the bulk of our team is on the technical and operations side, and what would otherwise seem like a soft skill, an HR type of thing, it's really not. It's really part and parcel of the front end staff and even the back end staff that support customers. So we take a few different approaches from a client experience perspective. Net Promoter Score is something that we've adopted. It's prevalent across many industries, as you know. We do a couple things with that. One is definitely the external. So we survey our customers for the standard money question of what's your likelihood of recommending to a colleague or a friend.
Pretty brutal question.
Yep.
I'll ask you one question. Would you recommend us or wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And that kind of and that kind of drives the overall process for us from a customer journey mapping perspective for track a customer's experience with us, whether it be a transaction or a more broader perspective. We look for trends within that and take action on it. So the whole point of a customer experience program is to not just do the ratings and the surveys, but also take action and make improvements. So it's around continuous improvement and the feedback loop to make things happen. But beyond external, we also do internal. So internal NPS within our employee base to make sure that there's alignment. And what we found we've been doing this for a few years now. One of some of the comments that come back from our internal folks is in terms of what's important to them within the organization is helping customers, providing superior customer service. And when you have the employee experience and the client experience match, it makes for a much happier place to work, a much happier experience for customers because everyone is so committed to solving customer problems.
Yeah, good lesson for everybody, including the people. How you treat your employees is how they treat your customers, and it's an important part in there. So we're going to do the test now. You've made a great statement of a client, and we have the client in the audience here. So Melody, tell us about your story. You tell us about COMDA and the story of how you've come to work with Carbon60 and the things that you've done in moving forward into cloud and working with an MSP.
Yeah. Well, as I stated, COMDA Advertising is a promotional products company. Mainly our main claim to fame, so to speak, has been the 13-month wall calendar at business advertising. It's been our bread and butter for a number of years. But with the digital world that we've moved into, obviously, calendars aren't necessarily what people are looking for anymore because they have them on their phones. So adding more promotional products to our business has been our transition over the last few years. We are a traditional family company. Our founder started the company back in 1973, and it was 2 people, and now it's over 300 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
a lot of calendars.
It's a lot of calendars. On average, we sell probably about 25 million calendars, and we produce over 70,000 orders a year. Yeah. So it's quite a busy place.
So you have 2 transformations happening. One is technical, obviously, but the other is your business. You can't stand still in your business. It's a competitive business.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, our business has been very traditional. Print production is what we do. Massive catalogs going out to our customers and prospects and sales flyers, and traditional sales force in the back, phoning our current clients and cold calling and that sort of thing. And as we're evolving, we're realizing that people obviously want to order more on the web. They don't necessarily want a salesperson phoning them anymore. But we do have a lot of those old-time customers with us that they do prefer to be called, and so we're in the middle of servicing both, and we're trying to change client behavior as well.
Yeah, I think as it is in technology, where it may not be one thing or another, is a big thing.
Yep.
You want to take care of your old customers, but you have to evolve to the new customers that are there. Same struggle we have as a publisher. We have to adapt to older and new customers. Some of the people like me are in retirement age. New people are coming up. You have the same issues in customers.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely. So, yeah, my journey is, like I said, I've been working with the company for over 28 years, had a lot of opportunity to experience many areas of the business. So my background is very business orientated. I actually am not a technical person, but I am very business orientated, so I understand process. I'm very organized. I know exactly what needs to be done in certain areas, and knew, of course, not having that technical background, I needed help from outside. We didn't have anybody on staff that had a technical background. So when I was fortunate enough to meet Peter Kelly at the time, found out what his business was really all about, not just hosting one server, but the business that he was trying to build, went right to him and said, look, I don't want this stuff on premise. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to manage it. We don't have the right facility to house servers properly. I need help. So went to him, and here we are.
Cool.
Yep.
Great. Yeah. And our next slide is on measurement. We talk about measuring success and things like that. You've had some successes in this, and I've taken a look over some of the numbers you've got. They're impressive. A real growth in where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was analyzing whether to have staff on site or not, because we did have contractors on site, and they were individual contractors, the thing that I found was I just couldn't build an internal team fast enough. Mm-hmm. Our websites needed updating and further development, so I needed to outsource better development and working tools with Carbon60. It just found, more value was going to come out of getting together with these guys and outsourcing all of those areas.
Yeah, and focusing on what you want to. Vic?
Yep.
You?
Yeah, so just carrying on in terms of measuring success. So that's a very important part.
It sounds like she is measuring success.
Absolutely. And Melody keeps us honest, definitely as one of our key customers. Regular account reviews, that's part and parcel from a service level management perspective, incident reviews, service tickets. Now, every customer of a certain scale is different in terms of the cadence, either weekly or monthly or quarterly, and more of a roadmap and visioning session on a half a year or quarterly basis and an annual basis to see what's the 3-year plan for the customer, and how are we going to help to support that within the existing framework and new frameworks as well. And what's important around all this is the transparency and communication. I think that's the key to the success for any relationship in life and also in business, especially with respect to what we're all about.
Well, managing services, outsourcing, giving something is a trust business. I mean, it's about trust, and and especially if you've got someone who's an astute business person, may not know everything technical, but wants to understand what's happening in there. But you guys had a long relationship, and one of the things we want to talk about the next slide, and I'll just push us into that, is but when things don't go as planned. So let's have our moment of truth here. Things don't always work out, no matter how much you want to work together in there. How do you cope with that?
Yeah, I think as a MSP within the space, these are complex solutions that we're managing. Various different kind of customers, different requirements, different expectations within it, and actually from our perspective, different levels of management. That's the flexibility that we have. So we don't want to be in the way for those that are customers that are wanting more control. But then for customers that do require more effort from our perspective, we want to be there and help them out for their issues. At the end of the day, things will happen. Servers go down. There's interruptions or latency or performance issues. The bottom line, I think you mentioned earlier, Jim, is to not finger point. And that goes, as an integrator, essentially, we use technologies from a number of different companies, software and hardware, and service providers as well. Something is inevitable to happen. So at the end of the day, it's being honest and transparent with our customers, and vice versa, to really work towards what the solution could be. We're at a level where we've got some depth across multiple technologies, have been in it for a while, so we can kind of dig in a little bit beyond our scope in some cases to at least help point in the right direction, get involved in conversations with other vendors in order to at least get to a solution, and that's essentially the goal.
Cool. Yeah. So Melody, the keys to a strong relationship. Vic's going to cover part of this, I'm sure, but
Yep.
from your point of view, how's that gone? Like, what advice would you give to people in the audience? And don't have, you're obviously you're running the technology. Don't be amazed by anybody who's technically out there. The business of running technology is a business. So what's your advice to the audience out there in terms of working with an MSP, or how to find that type of relationship that you found?
Well, quite frankly, I think building the relationship, honestly, it starts with the business. And you need to have a strong leader, quite frankly. You need to have somebody who is going to advocate for your business. You need to be open and honest, and you need to establish that trust relationship right away by saying exactly what it is that you're expecting from that vendor. You need to be able to provide the business background for the vendor. I often think that clients think that because you're hiring a person or a business that knows everything, they're the expert in that area, that they'll come in right away and they'll be able to solve your problems. You have to be the one who's the driver. You have to tell them about your business. You have to give them the background. You even have to introduce them to the rest of the culture in your business. The other senior managers, the owners that are involved, meeting them and understanding where they're coming from is also very important in building that relationship. That's definitely one thing that the team at Carbon60 has always done. A number of them have always come on site and met with us. They're part of our charity organization supporting us in many ways. They understand the importance, everything to do with our business. So to me, that's key. That's number one.
Cultural fit.
Cultural
important.
fit.
Yeah. Vic, from your point of view, keys to the relationship?
I think the open and honest feedback and the ability to, some of these are Melody's points in the sense that being inquisitive. As a vendor and an MSP, we ask a lot more questions than I have in other organizations, the service providers I've been at. And it's because we take a genuine interest in what the application is, what's the purpose of it from a business perspective, so that we understand and kind of pass that down across the organization, so they understand our level 1 desk and level 2 and 3 understand what the purpose of it is. So, for example, in certain cases, a dev environment that we light up may not be that, or a staging environment that we light up may not be as important in typical scenarios where it's not mission critical, it's staging. But in some cases, especially when you're doing production websites, having that staging environment is critical for the customer. It may not be generally for us, but for certain customers, it's critical because it's the last step before they push the button to go live. So when we understand what the true business drivers are, what the importance of different SLAs or different expectations are, we pass that around within the organization, the support organization, so that they can act accordingly. We've got notes within our systems to be able to act, modify our approach based on the knowledge that we have around the customer use cases.
And time again, I hear this from CIOs, from other people in there, and I'm not doing commercial for you guys, but this is obviously a successful relationship. A lot can be learned from it. And one of those learning lessons has been, I think, if I'm saying this right, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, is you need to find the culture of your partner has to mesh with your own. And you can tell it from when they walk in whether they're interested in your business. Because people come and go. That happens. People's roles change. You start out with a relationship with one person, you might move to another in there. But the cultures of organizations don't change that easily. And so watching how the people behave in there, and I've heard this from senior CIOs, watch that behavior in the early, develop those relationships, and because it's a long-term process. Is that fair enough?
Absolutely. I think especially whether it's a mid-sized type of opportunity or a large-scale environment, it's important to understand who is behind it, who's behind the first person that you talk to within, especially for a new customer looking in. You might have a whole bunch of salespeople come in to kind of do the pitch, or one engineer, but at the end of the day, those guys go away to a certain degree after the initial engagement. It's the support team that's going to be managing you on a day-to-day basis. So to be able to understand and talk to the leadership of those teams, it's critically important.
So we got a couple minutes left in there. Melody, we're going to let them do a little bit of a wrap up on the Carbon60.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great.
All right. So at the end of it, it's the Canadian market is a really big mid-market. Everybody wants to be a big fish in a small pond, and these are verbatim words from some of our customers. So we decided to put it in a nice slide as part of our value proposition. There's you're looking at American organizations that are in the same space. When they look at Canadian companies in the mid-market, they just don't register in terms of the level of service and customer intimacy that they can provide. It's just not scalable, and it's not a knock. It's just impossible almost to be able to deliver that. We take the approach of a very measured approach in the kind of customer relationships that we want to develop, and at the end of the day, we cultivate longer-term relationships with our customers, even in this dynamic world of cloud and consumption. Despite that, or with that, we're able to work on long-term engagements through ebbs and flows of an organization's IT and cloud journey. Next up, just a few summary points in terms of Carbon60, our value points. We're laser focused on managed hosting and IT infrastructure, multi-cloud, obviously. From a commitment perspective, we're a white glove service provider. We like to anticipate the problems before they happen and work with clients and customers to improve continuously. Platform excellence, that's a given. We work with our partners with HP and others to make sure we've got the best breed of technology for our customer workloads to rely on or to lie on. Credibility and longevity, essentially. We're an agile and nimble organization, but we've been around for quite a while, and that speaks volume in terms of our customer relationships that have been with us for so long, as Melody has explained today. And then lastly, just to highlight it again, the client experience culture, as you mentioned, Jim, is difficult to build. It's difficult to transition with the existing set of people. So if you find that and develop those relationships and vet them through reference checks, independent reference checks, and what the market is saying about them, that'll put you on the right path towards building a strong relationship with an MSP.
Great. We got a couple minutes for Q&A, and if we do, I'm going to probably only get to one question because we had a great session here. But we will, people put in questions, and you can do that even after this is over. We will gladly get back to you, and I think we'll all commit that we'll get back. The appropriate person will get back with an answer. But I want to ask you about the open source thing, because you actually, what is the reception of clients to innovation, the open and using open source? You mentioned that in your earlier piece, and I just wanted to get a quick mention of that in there, Vic. It was fascinating to me, being an open source junkie as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, our background is open source, I would say. So it might be self-serving because we tend to attract and enjoy those conversations with clients that are also looking at open source or open source minded. So I definitely think that a lot of our customers, especially when you look at DevOps and automation, it's critical to look at open source type of technologies to help accelerate and innovate and automate for a better experience.
And I'll just give you my pitches. When you're working in open source is great. It's good, wonderful. You need skills. You need people who know it. It often comes, unless you need to find support, and there's lots of places to get it, and that's a huge piece. By all means, try it, use it, wonderful, but have some backup, because you don't want to learn some of the lessons the way we've learned them. I'm going to thank everybody in here, and I'm going to encourage the audience to send us some stuff on when you get your form to fill out for evaluation. Send us some additional questions. If there are questions that you've got in there, we'll get back to you. I just want to do a quick little bit of a wrap up here. We want to thank you, Chris, for HPE sponsorship of this or anything else. But just some last words. You've been listening for the last few minutes. Anything?
The one thing I'll say is that it's a journey. It's a transformation. You have skills. You have expertise. There's learnings you can utilize from others that have gone through it, like Melody has. It's just be open-minded and look around how can you drive greater efficiencies within your organization to enable your businesses to get to the next level.
Yeah, and Beck, in terms of your participation in this, wonderful to see Canadian companies coming up. But your last words for the audience out there?
Yeah, I think as we kicked off with the survey, I think the overwhelming majority of businesses out there are still managing IT in-house. And when we look at MSPs, there's always a concern. Are they going to take over, and job issue or job questions. But more so than not, especially with MSPs, it's not a full outsource that we've been accustomed to. It's more of a partnership, an extension of what you're doing already to really fill in a lot of gaps around some of the key elements that we talked about around support.
And smart people, if you're CIOs out there or you're running an organization, there's lots to do.
Absolutely.
There's lots to do. It's where you want to focus. Do you want to be focused on helping your business innovate, or do you want to focus on doing some of the things you could release to someone else and be a partner with? Yep. Final words always go to you, Melody.
Well, the relationship, like I said, with many of the vendors that I've had the opportunity to work with are key. Having the opportunity to sit with people and go through this journey with them has helped COMDA immensely. I'm very lucky that I'm in this position. And again, I just want to stress relationship, talk to each other, be honest about what exactly it is that you want and what you expect out of that service provider, and, build that relationship.
We're going to make that the final word. Thanks a lot to everybody who's been out there. Thank you to Vic from Carbon60. Thank you to Chris, and again, thank you to HPE for sponsoring this, and Melody, thank you for spending your time and sharing your experience with everybody. I do want to say a little bit about the things, and I'm going to give you one tip that I've used, Melody. That is, I've gotten rid of the word vendor. It's partner. And in there, and I think so there'll be and that's thank you for that, because I think the partners are, and I want to thank the partners who are the sponsors of this, and to you for coming out, for spending your time, for the people who fund these things so that we can actually bring these types of conversations to you. I ask people to come out and not do a commercial for their company, but to actually talk about real issues and real things, and you've more than fulfilled that. So thank you to my three guests. Thank you to HPE especially, and we'll see you next time. Fill out your evaluation forms.